The biggest threat to why black people are not succeeding, and this is where I get on the liberals, is it's black people themselves. Nobody wants to have this conversation.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Prophetic Mentality Podcast. I am your host, Amr Mabrouk. Today, I'm joined with my co-host, Munir, as always, lovely. And we have a very, very special guest joining us today, Imam Marc Manley, Imam of the Middle Ground Masjid in Upland, California. It is a pleasure having you here this morning, Imam. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic, and I've been looking forward to this episode for quite some time.
Strap in, man. That's all I can say, man.
We have been having
ibuprofen. Take a Percocet.
We've been having riveting conversations since our pre-interview yesterday. That could have been its own podcast, and we've been talking already, so I just had to actually pause.
I know. I think we talked for about an hour yesterday and about
30 minutes now.
40 minutes now.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope that SD cards don't get full.
When you guys release the outtakes and the B-roll, it's just gonna be me.
And we'll definitely get canceled. Inshallah, looking forward to that. All right, so Imam, yesterday, we kind of touched base on the kind of topics we wanted to talk about, and I think we said we wanted to start it off with you did like this long Instagram story post talking about Muslim academics, right? Or Muslims in academia. Is that was kind of
possible? I post a lot of things. It's hard to kind of keep track after a while, but that sounds like something I would do. Yes.
Yeah. And kind of how like the mentality of Muslims in academics, it's not the same, they don't have the same worldview as Muslims. And now, these people are coming in with their ideologies, and these kind of ideologies are being infiltrating the Muslim mind, right? And then people are copying, pasting, sharing these things, and this is not. Let's see, where did we go with it? And so now that I'm recording, I lost the flow of the conversation.
Well, I would say that the thing with the Muslim academics that the common Muslim has to understand, and I can't even remember what I wrote because I write a lot and I talk a lot, probably way too much. But I'm an Imam, and that's what happens. You talk a lot. I think if there's anything beneficial to keep in mind is that the Western Muslim academic has a different. They have a different priority because their job is, number one, and this is just academia. This is not the Muslim academic. This is just Western academics. It's like a shark. You have to keep swimming or you die. You got to keep producing, material or you die. Right?
They say publish or die.
Right. So it's it's a publish or die type of thing, right?
And you got to keep wanting up the other person to get clout. Is that kind of?
Not only that. I mean, that's maybe its own separate thing. But the other thing is also they have to then publish material that will, to some extent, appease, right, that paradigm or that setting. And this isn't a shot against Western academia, but Western academia doesn't look at Islam as the truth. It looks at it, at best, as a curiosity amongst other curiosities. And so when they come to their conclusions, when they make their work, right, they have to articulate that in that framework that will be appeasing to a point of view that is, this is an interesting thing. It probably didn't happen. Matter of fact, it couldn't have happened, right? But that's really interesting, right? And that's their view on Islam, on Christianity, on all religions. They're not coming to it from the point of view of true believers. So they're having to articulate their thoughts and their ideas in that. Now, you do that long enough, not only you're like, okay, it's not just like how black people have to code switch, right? Like when I'm with white people or with non-black people, I speak, talk, and act a certain way. And then when I'm with my own people do, and by the way, not only black people, everybody does this, right? So it's not just that they learn to code switch. After a time, the wires kind of get crossed, right? And you see where now they start not only articulating that, say, to, the Western academic audience, their review boards, their whatever, then they go into the Muslim community and start articulating that as the truth, right? And so, the Muslim community has to be somewhat cognizant of this fact that, hey, you know what, when you have Western trained Muslim academics, we shouldn't dismiss them wholesale, but we should give them a healthy dose of scrutiny and side eye and really interrogate where their priorities and allegiances lie. To me, I think, I don't know if that's what I wrote or what, hopefully that's what I was trying to convey. Because,
no, yeah, that's definitely.
I think we've seen this change in attitude even in such popular figures as like Dr. Yasser Qadhi, and I don't want to name drop. Like I don't know Dr. Yasser very well. I think I've met him twice in my life. He was a very nice person. But let's say the evolution of the thought and conclusion process of Dr. Yasser Qadhi has changed a lot over the last couple of decades. Where did that change come from? Undoubtedly from being influenced as his time and tenure in Western academia, right? Just take, for instance, his newfound issue with the qira'at of the Quran. Oh, this is a big problem. If I were to tell you, or were to tell the Muslim community, it would cause people to have major doubt. Well, number one, all of these people coming out and talking about qira'at, right, the variant recitations of the Quran, this ain't nothing new. We've been dealing with this since the beginning, right? But because, Dr. Chuck Fulan of whatever said university has made it an issue, right? Now it's an issue for you. And then you turn around and make it an issue for the Muslims. This has never been an issue for the Muslims.
Well, isn't it kind of like his I guess his explanation was, I don't want to speak on behalf of someone, but the idea was, like Western academia, there's like a method of doing investigation and coming to conclusions. And when you apply that method to the qira'at, then you have a hard time coming up with the same.
Sure.
That's kind of
how could they never interrogate how Western academic thought interrogates? It's always like, oh man, whatever the Muslim methodology was for determining the truth, right? That's got all these different problems, right? But when Western methods, whatever their methods are, man, that's the truth.
That's
so
a good
if
method.
we cannot, it's an unquestionable method, okay, right? Particularly with their over-reliance on empirical data. I actually just listened to a lecture of the other guy, some non-Muslim dude, older guy. It was funny, his hair was like silver, but he had like blue in his hair. His hair is dyed blue. I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. And he was talking about like the origins of Islam. Wow. And how like, when it comes to the, not only to the hadith literature, but to the Quran itself and the canonization of the Quran, we don't find the empirical evidence. And so, number one, who made empiricism the complete sole incontrovertible method of determining the truth? Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, forget about the Quran, forget about the hadith. There's no means of attaining empirical evidence that Allah exists. Because Allah, you cannot see him, you cannot touch him, you cannot smell him, you cannot taste him, you cannot hear him, right? Allah is not perceivable by al-hiss, by the five senses.
Yeah.
Allah is not perceivable by empirical means. So, all of this stuff about, again, there's no interrogation of the epistemology, right? How Western academics, how they construct their knowledge. There's no interrogation of it. It's like, oh man, I don't like using race a lot, but like, wow, these Western white Europeans, man, whatever methodology, man, that is how we have to do tahqiq. That is how we determine the truth, right?
Yeah, which that wasn't the way for us for a long time.
Yeah, Dr. Jonathan Brown, he dedicates a chapter in his book about hadith.
Yes.
Yeah, on the historical critical method, HCM, right? So he tries to deconstruct and all the assumptions they have behind X, Y, Z thing.
There's incredible assumptions, right?
Like one of them, if you want a taste, is if there's a hadith that speaks ill about Islam, it must be true because they would not transmit something bad otherwise. That's their assumption. But Jonathan would be like, well, the snad's bad. They actually use this hadith as an example of a bad hadith in all these textbooks. But they take it, they say, oh, forget the snad, all this. It wouldn't have been transmitted if it was true. So it must be true.
Right.
So that's one of their assumptions that they'll take when they try to apply it to Islam.
Yeah. So there's all of these issues. I mean, similarly, when he was discussing issues of evolution, right? And
well, I remember this lecture in 2004 distinctly because I was kind of struggling with the same question back in the day. And is that what you're referring to? His lecture?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, again, him now diving into, so to tie up a bow on the part about qira'ah, number one, all due respect, Dr. Yasir Qadhi is not a mutakhassas fil qira'at. He is not a specialist in the field of qira'ah. Why are you talking about it? If you are one of the kaba'ir of the ulama, one of the big major scholars of qira'ah, and you were talking about this, okay, I'm going to definitely listen to you. You are not a specialist. I remember the very first time I met him in Memphis. I don't mean to be controversial. I remember, I went down and I think it was because I had led the salah and I recited in, I don't know, maybe I recited in Khalaf or I recited in some other riwayah of Quran. And he was like, hey, where did you learn that? And I was like, from my Quran teacher. And he was like so amazed, like, wow, you know these other qira'at of Quran? I was like, yeah, it ain't really all that, man. It's just, And so that clearly revealed to me this is not a person who is again, I'm not defaming Dr. Yasir Qadhi, right? He's my Muslim brother. I love him for the sake of Allah. I respect him. But he's not a specialist in that field. And when you want to come to the point where you want to put doubts in the minds of the collective Muslim ummah, that the book that they rely and trust upon as the verbatim word of God is now unreliable because of no, I'm sorry. Take a step back.
Yeah.
And you are not the one to be having this discussion, right? Have a little bit of humility. And also, and I'm not saying Dr. Yasir Qadhi is not a humble person. He actually, for the most part, does seem, alhamdulillah, a very humble person. But sometimes, one of the attitudes that we can get out of Western academia is that question everything. They have this kind of like brazen attitude. It's like, look, we don't have a problem with questioning, because at least I don't. You can question whatever you want. I'm confident we'll always come to the same answer. La ilaha illallah Muhammad abduhu wa rasuluhu. We'll always come to that same answer, right? But when you yourself, and that's why even for me as Imam, sometimes people will ask me questions and I'm like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable to answer that question. Somebody recently asked me a question about finance. Okay, in my training as an Imam, I have some basic understandings of the Islamic approach to contracts. But you know what? I'm not a specialist. I said, you know what? You should take this question to Sheikh Joe Bradford. You go ask him this question. You let me know what he says, because I would like to add it to my own little database of knowledge. But I'm very comfortable not being a Walmart of answers. Like, I don't have an answer for everything, right? And there's some areas I feel more strong and less. And if I don't, you know what? Go ask Sheikh Joe. Go ask Sheikh Jibril. Go ask Sheikh Suhaib. Go ask. I don't have to be, number one, I'm just an Imam. I'm not an alim, right? I mean, I've trained, I've studied in these things, but I know I'm confident in what I have and also what I don't have. And what I find sometimes with the Western trained academic is that, hey, let's dive into this boat. Now, if you wanted to dive into those waters as your own little private halaqah, little private circle between a few friends, you want to discuss these things, labas, that's not an issue. but you want to have this conversation publicly with the amplifying power of Dr. Yasser Qadi, right? If I, as Imam Marc, start talking about some real off,
obscure
thing or whatnot, or nobody cares, because like what? I think I have like, I don't even have 2,000 people that follow me on social media, right? Nobody follows me. Nobody cares that much about what I say. I don't have that kind of amplifying power. And actually, alhamdulillah, that's good, right? But when you are a person that has millions of followers in this day and age, you really need to think twice when you open your mouth, even if, I'm not saying that he can't have those thoughts about the qira'at, but it's irresponsible to work out or hash it out in public when, again, you're not even an expert in the field. I just gave a khutbah about this yesterday, about this whole COVID stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God! Please.
I am neither pro-vaccine nor am I like the cell phone tower is transmitting 5G. I am double vaccinated, but I regret in some ways doing it because I felt a little bit of pressure, not by my community, but just I'm an imam, and then my wife is like, look, I'm a type 2 diabetic. You're almost 50. You have a daughter.
I mean, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Like, okay, tawakkal ala Allah. I trust it. I'm just bismillah and I go do it. Right?
Yeah.
Hindsight, after reading some more stuff now, I'm like, man, I don't know if that was the best. I'm not saying it was the worst either. I just don't know if it was the best decision. We don't know what the long-term effects will be, but whatever. And so I'm there, but however, I'm not going to get on the mic or on my Instagram and just start going off on vaccinations, right? I may have my own personal doubts about, I would say I may have my own reservations about the vaccine, right? Which many people do, right? But I'm not going to amplify and broadcast those reservations, because you know what? If I was just a dude, if I was still just working in IT and I wasn't an imam and nobody cared about me, and I go on Twitter or Facebook or whatever and say X, Y, and Z, whatever, right? But if I say anything as imam, it's like we have that example from the Prophet ﷺ, right? When they had the ideal initially for the Battle of Tabuk, and he was like, we should do A. And the companions were like, are you saying that as the messenger of Allah? Or are you saying that as Muhammad ibn Abdullah? Are you saying that as Allah's messenger, meaning that you have isma and you'll be divinely protected from error, and Allah is telling you to do this and our victory is assured? Because if that's it, then it doesn't really matter. It could be go stand on your head and whatever. It doesn't matter what, because that's it, maktub, right? But if you're saying this as Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, and this is just your best idea, I have this other plan I think you should look at. Right? I got this other, just take a look at this for a second. I just want to show you this other idea, right? And so that's how we got the other plan of how to dig the trench. Because that wasn't the first plan.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm saying is, like, when you are in a position of leadership and you have the ability to amplify your thoughts to the point of having some type of authority, be somewhat cautious. And that's my criticism a lot of times of the Western academic approach is like, we don't have to be cautious.
You're an expert in everything. Once you have a PhD title, you are expert.
Right. And again, what is the end goal of your academic findings as a Western academic? Well, like you said, what? Publish or die. Publish papers. Keep your job. Spread knowledge. That kind of thing. Okay, fine. What is the directive of that as a Muslim academic who believes, right, it should be what? To bring
people
benefit,
closer to the deen.
to bring people, exactly, bring people to Islam, keep them in Islam, keep their iman, like that kind of, it's a total different outlook. And I feel that attitude gets eroded in the Western academy as not being authentically and academically rigorous. if you are committed unquestioningly to the truth claims of Islam, come hell or high water, despite whatever empirical findings there are, like, hey, look, man, I don't care what you say, la ilaha illallah. This is the verbatim word of God. He was the messenger of Allah, alayhi salawatu wassalam. End of story, right? And I don't care what papyrus you dig up out the earth. La ilaha illallah Muhammad abduhu wa rasuluh. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. I don't care, right? I don't care what you dig up out of the earth for that. That will be viewed as, well, you're just an ideologue.
Yeah.
Right? You're a fanatic. You're a,
That's the big one.
So these are some of my, like I told you, man, if you get me started, what was that Rolling Stone song? Start me up. If you start me up, I'll never stop. Right? If you get me started, man, I have a hard time to answer any question in 5 minutes, right?
No, it's fine. Like we're well, this is kind of how we wanted to get the discussion started, where we were talking about Western academia, those prevailing ideologies, which are in themselves making more ideologues than creating free thinkers.
And let me just say for clarity, I have no animosity towards Dr. Yasir Qadhi. He's my brother in Islam. I disagree with him on some things, but absolutely, I will never throw my brother like to the wolves. So if he happens to hear or come across this, hey, look, I just happen to disagree with you on some things.
Yeah.
But you're my brother in Islam. I love you. I respect you. Your honor is important to me. And so I'm not saying, and if I said anything that, then may Allah forgive me, may Dr. Yasir Qadhi forgive me. I'm just being honest, using him as to talk about, because he's not the only one. This is not something.
And in all fairness to him, he said what you said I think in a second interview, where he said maybe that wasn't the best avenue to have that discussion, because he kind sometimes you're just speaking with someone, you get carried away.
Right? You got a microphone
you're just talking.
And now there's a microphone everywhere, or there's a camera everywhere, or there's a tweet everywhere. There's a text box and a submit button everywhere. And
sometimes these snippets get shared without context, without the follow up, and all you have is Dr. Yasir Qadhi says the Quran is not.
To be honest, I feel for people like him and like Omar Suleiman that have like millions. If I doubled my followers, I might think about literally just canceling all my social media accounts, because I know that I can sometimes be a little flippant. It's just part of my attitude. I'm still working on myself. I wouldn't be that comfortable having that kind of mouthpiece, because I do not want to show up on the day of judgment and some dude's looking at me, hey man, you told me to do A, B, and C, and that didn't work. Like I'm. So my advice to Muslim academics, I'm not saying don't go into Western academia, because one of the great one of the great exceptions to the rule is Dr. Sherman Jackson. Now, I'm not saying he's the only one. He's one of the great exceptions to the rule, that somebody that has gone into the Western academy has firmly not only kept his Muslim identity, but clearly has kept his allegiance and his dedication to the Muslim community as a priority, as
an academic,
a Western academic. So, yes, I'm unapologetically, I love Dr. Jackson. He's been a mentor and a great Muslim figure to me for, I don't know, almost 30 years. And so I might be somewhat biased. But I'm just saying he's a great example that it doesn't all have to be bad, right? So we should also attenuate our critique of Western academia that, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. And in fact, thank Allah Almighty that we have a Dr. Jackson in the academy, right? Though he may be highly outnumbered, right? Thank God that he's in there, because he at least does give us, he gives us a place there. Yeah. And so, we have, and that's why there's no need to do this stuff. We could just simply follow what a wonderful example, right? Kind of, do it the way that Dr. J did,
Agreed. So rounding back about these ideologies, creating ideologues, and kind of people absorbing whatever, whatever the most, it feels like every other week there's some new trend with what it means to be a social activist, and it's all coming from, this academic process. And, people are kind of absorbing this in their internal state, right? And this is just kind of based on what I see just scrolling through social media. And I'll tell you a funny story, actually. I was invited to a wedding. And a wedding is supposed to be like a nice time where you celebrate the union of two people. So it's like a Egyptian, farah. It's supposed to be a party. We party it up. So I show up, my wife and I, we travel. And the first thing is the bride and the groom, they take the stage and they make a speech. Munir's laughing because he already knows. I've never seen this anywhere where the bride and groom make a speech. And then they start off by saying that they wanted to recognize that the hotel or the venue that we were at was on occupied Native American land, and that they were going to preach about the struggle for the Native Americans in that area who had their land stolen from them, and now there's this hotel that we are having their wedding in.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there, and at first I was laughing, and then I was like, wait a second. If you think that this is sinful, then you just invited me here, and now I'm part of this oppression. And I paid to be here, and I paid you a gift. So all of this is at the expense of the people you are now advocating for. And it honestly left an extremely sour taste.
I mean, if that's the case, why didn't you just go?
Why have a wedding at all?
Why not have some, native shaman conduct your marriage and do it on the reservation? And yeah.
So, and it was, I don't know if it was virtue signaling or maybe they were pressured into having a wedding, and this was kind of
no, I think it's probably more the first.
And we left, and it was unfortunate because this is one of my really good friends. But this is he went through school, and this is kind of his thought process now. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's so hip to be woke, right? And I don't want this podcast to just turn into like bashing on being woke or being an activist. But that we do have in Islam, there is an idea of justice and what justice is, and who is the ultimate one who serves justice, and how we can achieve justice on earth. We have all of that, but in Islam, when you become an activist or woke activist or whatever, it's trying to use their methods to manifest that on earth, I feel like just creates more oppression in a way. Does that make sense what I just said? Are you following me, or do I need to clarify a little bit more?
Oppression and perhaps even more importantly, confusion. Right. It might create more oppression. Like,
sorry, not oppression like you're oppressing someone else, but I feel like when you absorb these ideologies and these mentalities, sometimes I hear these people speak, and I just see the anger and emotion coming out of them, and I'm like, you're a slave to your own emotions. You are so angry. You are so, and these are people who may
you can call it dhulm. Like in Arabic, dhulm isn't just like oppression, like someone's beating you down. It's also things misplaced things not in their proper place. So that emotion is misplaced emotion, not anger for the right reason or not happy for the right reason.
Yeah, like why would you choose to do that at your wedding?
A very nice wedding. Like this.
I don't know, man. We could do a whole podcast on like why Muslims have problems celebrating. Like Muslims,
what do you mean Muslims have trouble celebrating?
Man, I'm an Imam, so I do a lot of marriages. I go to a lot of weddings. Man, that joint is like a funeral. That joint is like a 4-hour-long funeral sometimes. It's like a funeral with loud music.
I guess when you say it like that, yeah.
I mean, so many times I have to go and kind of like do this little stand-up routine to like get people to laugh because like, hey, like this is a happy time, right? It's weird, man. I mean, obviously, our deen is one of being the middle way, and we should not go to extremes in celebration or being silly and laughing all the time. But there are times where
you're allowed to.
You should. Well, there's not times to be extreme, but there's times to be
laugh
happy
and be happy. Yeah.
To laugh and to I mean, one of the nicknames of the Prophet ﷺ was ad-dhahak. Right? I mean, we forget about these things, right? But then but what do we hear? Well, brother, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you knew what I knew, you would laugh little and cry much. Okay, but then why do they call him ad-dhahak, the one who laughs?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we're kind of I don't know, but we got some issues with, again, or we go to the other extreme. We're either like always down, or, all we do is laugh and don't take anything silly,
Yeah. Yeah. And like yes, I agree. We are in an area where we are living in the extremes, and it carries from, trend to trend, week on week, the next outrage kind of thing. And nothing is tempered. Nothing is sustainable. Right. And with what I said, I wanted to actually touch base on your tenureship in Rancho Masjid. Or sorry, maybe I'll cut that part out. I don't know if you're uncomfortable with me saying. I mean, people can go read it on your blog.
Much of a tenure,
but the one thing I wanted to highlight was, you spent, that was your first post as imam from pivoting from your IT position, and this is, I'm gonna just put it very frankly, you dealt with some very unpleasant folks. Some were racist. Some were just not pleasant in having a leader there. They weren't happy with the idea of there being a leader. And, you stepped out, you stepped down, and you made a statement. And, I sometimes reread that statement because I feel like the way you went about that was extremely humble, right? And I don't think you would see that nowadays if someone experienced racism in their local community and they were in some position of leadership and they stepped down. I think they would step down and drag the community through the mud. And then that community, would be blasted, and, that organization may or may not, they'd probably, we have to redo the board, and there would be chaos there, right? Where now it was on your, what happened there was just kind of like, this is not for me. It was very unpleasant. I wish the people there who are good the best, and may get people guide the rest, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something else for me. And it was just kind of like a very peaceful transition.
I think, however, there's it's funny, a lot of times you time passes and you think about things a little bit different, but I've had several people recount to me, oh man, the people were racist and the people were this. Okay, that gives a false impression, to be honest, though. And I'll own that, because maybe that's from the way that I gave that impression. That gives the impression that it was like divvied up. Like there was an equal amount of nice people and an equal amount of racist people and an equal amount of no. Like with everything, usually it's like this very vocal minority, right? And yeah, sir. I mean, there's no doubt that there were some. I mean, I don't know if I want to call it. I hate this term racism because it's so ubiquitous at this point. It almost becomes meaningless. But yes,
define it for us. When you say
there were definitely people, let's say, that were objecting to a lot of things that I represented that made them uncomfortable. So my first day on the job, and I will remember this story. My wife is like, God, do you always have to tell this story? I'm like, well, it's kind of interesting. My first day on the job, I show up to lead the Fajr prayer. First day. And, so of course, I want to try to impress the community that, okay, like I do know what I'm doing. So I don't know, I recited something long, like from Surah Yunus or something from. So afterwards, I'm walking back to the shoe rack, and there's this Palestinian guy, and we're having this conversation in Arabic. And, mashallah, Shaykh, qara'tuka jayyid, the forsa jayda, you really. And so we're having this nice conversation, nice to meet you, your recitation is nice, and la, 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 like, And so he asked me, like, "Sho ismak ya Sheikh al-Karim? What is your name?" I said, well, my name is Marc. Boom, the conversation stops, switches to English, right? Even though we've been having this conversation for a couple minutes now, and it's comfortably in Arabic, right? And what do you mean your name is Marc? I said, well, yeah, my name is Marc. He said, oh, I thought you were Arab. I said, no, I just look like one.
Yeah, he passes like Moroccan. Or
Yeah. I mean, my wife is Algerian, and I look like all my in-laws. Like I do. Especially if you put me in a burnous and tarbout, that's it, man. I look, straight North African. So he's like, oh, I thought you were Arab, man. I said, no. He said, but well, don't you have a Muslim name? No. Well, you have to have a Muslim name. What is your Muslim name? I was like, well, my Muslim name is Marc, man. And he's like, no. And then he starts really getting, belligerent. No, brother, you have to change,
you have to change your name. You have to change your name.
Yeah, you have to change your name. Okay. So the guy goes to the board the very first day and says you have to terminate his contract and you have to hire somebody that has a Muslim name.
Wow.
And so this was a kind of foreshadowing moment of some, not all, some of what I would deal with. And so I have come to understand, because actually I had a similar experience. I hope my wife won't get too angry. I was talking, after we got married, talking with my brother-in-law on the phone back in Algeria. It was, Mabruk alaik, and, congratulations, right? And so he was explaining to, my brother-in-law was explaining to his wife, Samia, right? Married, he's American, but he's an Imam. Oh, mashallah. What is his name? His name is Marc. Marc. Doesn't he have to change his name? And so, having gone through that professionally and personally, it kind of made me realize, again, I'm not excusing
the behavior.
I don't want to excuse wrong behavior.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I can call her my sister-in-law, right? I'm not saying her behavior was bad. The guy, his behavior was definitely way out of pocket, right? So I'm not trying to excuse bad behavior. But I have come to also realize that if you come from a Muslim background in the Muslim world, not you cats that are born here or raised here in America, right? And in Algeria, there is 0.000 negative 99% chance that you will go to a masjid and the dude leading the salah, his name will be Marc, right?
Unless you go to Algeria.
And so, my brother-in-law Mahmoud was like, when you come here, inshallah, nusammek Zakaria. When you come here, we're going to call you Zakaria. I'm like, okay, as long as you put Marc before that, Marc Zakaria, maybe, right? No, I get it. Like, there's just no concept, not just of a Muslim, right? Because it wasn't only about me as okay, whatever, he converted to Islam. Matter of fact, one of my brother-in-laws, he had a good friend of his, Jewish.
Wow.
Right? That they became friends. I think his name was Michael. And actually, the dude went to Algeria, visited my deceased father-in-law, rahimahullah, right? And they were cool with it. Okay, whatever. He's Jewish. His name is Michael, but he converted to Islam. Labas. The issue is when you get to Imam, right? Like you're an Imam. You're in charge. You lead the prayer. So that's extraordinary, right? Again, I'm not trying to excuse bad behavior. Yeah, the dude, what he did was ridiculous, right? But I think this is the part if we're going to have a conversation about wokeness, that those of us who are the critics of wokeness, or even for the woke people who are sometimes rightfully enraged by bad behavior. Let's not try to make it where anti-racists that's a wholly bad thing. No, that's a great thing, right? But what they also must understand is that there is a logic and a rationality to it, right? Not all hate and not all bigotry or it's not all illogical. So I can understand how this Palestinian guy or how my sister-in-law
go into that a little bit. What do you mean when you say bigotry cannot be illogical?
Right. I'm not saying it can't be immoral. Obviously, in some situations it can, and even in some it can't. Right. Like for me, I'm not down with LGBTQ.
You're about to get canceled,
right? I never signed up in the first place, right? So, I am not pro LGBTQ, right?
Yeah, of course.
So that for some people would be a bigot. Matter of fact, my middle brother, you're bigoted because I said, oh, hey, I can live with that. Meaning that what? I don't like a certain kind of thing. But what I did tell my brother, I said, look, my brother's not Muslim. Right? I'm the only Muslim in my family. I said, look, you have your set of beliefs, I have mine. I said, here's the thing. I can justify my beliefs through a very logical and rational construct. Right? Now, you may not agree with them, and you may reject them, and that's your prerogative to do so. But that doesn't make my attitudes irrational, right? The Palestinian brother at the masjid that was like, what in the heck? I just prayed behind a dude that might not even be Muslim. He says his name is Marc and he's the Imam. This is crazy, right? I'm not saying that he's not wrong, but I'm also saying like, isn't it really that hard to figure out the interworkings of why that's such a big problem with him or with my sister-in-law? Like, it's not hard to figure out how that works, right? And that's an important part of wanting to have a conversation with those who we, may disagree with, right? The idea always is that, something that a person will dislike at the end will always be repugnant and irrational, right? No, it may actually be, like I told my brother, I said, no, like I wish no harm visited upon any gay person. But at the same time, I can never get down with that, right? And so I have a very principled, logical, rational objection to that. The issue is you and I have a mutually exclusive definition of the common good. Mm-hmm. My definition of the common good is the Book of Allah and His Messenger, right? That's my definition of the common good, alayhi salatu wasalam, right? Your definition is just whatever's bouncing around in your head, right? And I don't, that might be a little bit, again, but I mean, literally, what is it that you, other than just your personal experiences and whims and desire?
What is it anchored in?
Right.
Yeah. No one has it. And what's funny with that issue, LGBT, they can claim like, oh, you guys are bigoted, that which leads to hate, which leads to whatever else, but they never apply that to any of our other beliefs. Like alcohol, we're 10 times against alcohol and all the harms it causes, whatever. No one ever says, you guys hate all the people who drink alcohol, all your coworkers who go to happy hour, you must hate them and you want harm upon them and you want... No one says that for any other belief, which tells you it's not rooted in anything rational itself. It is an emotion. It is
actually a very, very good point. We don't eat pigs. Does that
Right.
mean we're out there just slaughtering pigs and getting rid of... No, we're just, that's...
I can be against something without hating the people associated. I can hate, because I hate it for the sake of Allah.
I can hate a thing, but also still not wish you any harm.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
We hate kufr.
Yes,
we're supposed to at least.
Right. I mean,
doesn't mean we go slaughter every non-believer.
Exactly. I can. I mean, this is so. Again, exactly. These kinds of arguments. But to be honest, this is what a lot of our community now is struggling to manifest their faith in. Right, it's like because nobody wants to be told that they're a jerk. Nobody wants to be told that they're a unreasonably mean person or something like that. And so, a lot of Muslims now have changed their attitudes. For instance, on easy low-hanging fruit, the LGBTQ issue. Right, they have changed their attitude on that, not because they have really worked out some way of interpreting the verses differently, or which there ain't no room for, because those ayat that deal with qawmul lut, or as I say, qawmul huruf, right? They are mahkumat. They are straightforward. Yeah. So they are only doing so because of, and again, I think for those of us, while we may want to, sometimes, skewer them, we have to understand the societal pressures under which Muslims operate. Not to condone it, but if we are going to try to counter it, we have to understand all the factors that are operating and are forces acting on people.
Definitely, yeah. What are some things you think people can do to counteract it? Is it just learning about it? Do you think it's relying on imams in leadership positions to say something, or do we need more people of culture creating?
I don't know, man.
No,
part of
or not really.
Racism is part of the human.
I thought we were talking about LGBTQ, but we talked
LGBTQ.
Well, but actually, what's fine? I'm fine pivoting away from the LGBTQ thing because we talked about that one multiple times. But the racism thing.
Racism is part of the human condition. I'm not saying that we excuse it, because clearly the Prophet ﷺ in his khutbah al-wida, in his final sermon, made it very clear that not only what his opinion, right, but what authoritatively should be the disposition of his community on racism, right? That You know, the Arab has no superiority over the Ajam, the black over the white, vice versa. So that's very clear, right? But at the same time, it is a ubiquitous trait of the human being. So, again, not from the point of excusing it, but actually from the point of confronting it. You cannot, it's like saying, like, okay, you know what, you got diabetes.
Okay.
And so I'm going to treat your diabetes by ignoring the fact that you got diabetes. And I'm just going to say, you know what? The way to beat your diabetes is to have, you know what? You got to just eat a lot of sugar, right? You got to go just, you know, or, you know, drink this bleach. Like we'll do some sort of Trumpian, you know, type of approach to it, right? Here, have this bleach, right? You know, I cannot treat your illness or whatever that it is by ignoring your illness, right? So
what's the illness?
I mean, I think what we have to
You're saying the illness it's just part of the human condition. That's
racism. Number one, racism is a part of the human condition.
Can you define the term?
It's very hard. I think it is not simply
not that I don't know what you mean, but just because there's
for me, if I were to try to come up with a term, it's not just simply that you don't like a person because of their
skin color,
phenotypical, you know, al-zahirat, like their external appearances or their cultural things, right? But wanting to maybe cause them harm or something like that. I don't know.
Okay, that's more than okay.
That for me, I'm not saying that's the Webster's dictionary version of it. I'm saying, you know, more for myself.
Gotcha.
And so, again, like going back to me in the masjid.
Okay.
Those few vocal people that, you know, can I comfortably say they were all racist? Probably a couple of them I probably could comfortably label that way. The others were people like, you know what, man, I am shattering their idea of reality because I'm bringing such a different aesthetic to Islam and to the Imam that they just simply cannot accept. Now, I'm not saying that is excusable, laudable behavior. What I'm saying is now, after a little bit wiser, a lot more balder, and a lot more gray, right, and having had time to reflect upon it, as I said yesterday, you know what? If I could go back in a time machine, I probably never would have taken that position as Imam to begin with, for a number of reasons. It was clear I was not a good fit for that community, right? As I said, it was majority Desi with the next biggest group being Arabs, and then just a few scatterings of, you know, converts and black folks and whatnot, right? And so I don't think either one of those groups was really prepared to take their spiritual marching orders from a black person, and especially somebody that, like me, I come and tell you I'm black, and they're like, brother, you're not black. You know, like they cannot accept. They're like, you know, like if you are not from Bilad Sudan, you're not black. I mean, I can't tell you how many people. Where does Imam Marc from? Oh, brother, you know, he's black. He's African American. No, brother, he is not black. Brother Bilal over there from Senegal, he is black. Imam Marc is not black, right? So. I brought too many things that stirred up the pot, right? There's like ambiguous blackness. 1 minute the dude's in a bow tie, the next he's in a jubba. You know, it was just too much. It was just too many different things happening at the same time. And as I said yesterday too, this was a community that had never had an imam. And that meant that they had gone decades of not having to have centralized leadership. And to be quite fair, the people that brought me in to be the imam, I don't think they adequately consulted the community whether they were down with now kind of having to have one person figuratively in charge. Because in reality, I wasn't in charge of the masjid. But, you know, once you're imam, it's like, okay, you're the dude that's in charge, right? And I don't think that they were prepared to have one person be in charge. And so all of that now, hindsight, to be honest, the biggest problem was that community wasn't prepared for me. And so the biggest issue wasn't the racism. Yeah, I mean, like I'm only going to take a certain kind of abuse. And that
Everyone has a limit.
I've worked jobs before where it's like, you know what, here's my apron, here's my hat, here's my badge. Like I just can't do this, man. I've walked out of several jobs like that, and so yes, definitely that one Jum'ah, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, where that dude went off on me, and then on top of it, the board that was there didn't support me, or rather, I'd say 80-90% of the people on the board that were there didn't. There was a small 10% that did, and those are the people that, alhamdulillah, we went and made middle ground. Hindsight being what it is, sure, it fits the narrative now. Those racist Arabs, those racist Pakistanis, that fits the narrative now. Looking at it, hindsight, the biggest issue, it just wasn't a fit. It just was, and because it wasn't a fit and it was forced to make a circle fit in a square peg, it brought out some of these other things. I'm not saying we excuse them, but I can see it from a different angle now.
It could be argued, I'm not saying I'm doing that you are apologizing on behalf of racists, and that it's the 21st century and everyone should be down with diversity. That's what we thrive on. We need diversity. So why can't people just change? Why?
Because
you live in
diversity
America,
creates adversity, right? This is my new little buzz phrase. I'm gonna have some T-shirts made up, right?
Diversity
creates adversity. We've been sold this
melting
myth, right? Particularly by the left, right? And I don't say this lightly.
The political left, yeah.
Right. Well, the moral left too, because there is a moral and ethical ideology with them as well. We've been sold this idea that diversity solves all problems, right? Or most certainly helps them to dissolve into one wonderful pot, right? No, actually, diversity creates a lot of adversity, especially in its infancy. Maybe that would be the other tagline on the T-shirt, right? And if we look at our own history, you look at Al-Andalus, right? Like, what was one of the problems in Al-Andalus? Okay, it was
Stagnation.
The decadence and the corrupt, but also, man, they couldn't get along with each other because of what? Some diversity issues amongst the Muslims.
Interesting. I didn't know.
Right? You had like the
That's the first I've heard of
Shurabiya movements, right? Of those Muslims that were originally Iberian, right, and versus those that came from either North Africa or even tracing their lineage back to the Hijaz, and so there were tensions amongst the Muslims themselves, somewhat axiomatic, just simply over what? Diversity. We, as in America, and I think this is probably more true than I would venture a guess bet over anywhere else in the world, and most certainly through any other part in time of our history as an ummah. We have the greatest diversity. I mean, you have Muslims literally from every part of the world, and you got Muslims who ain't even Muslim, right? I mean, we have Qadiani Ahmadi Muslims who are not technically Muslim, right? You have Nation of Islam, they're not Muslim.
Progressive Muslims.
Right? And then now, I mean, you've got Shi'i, you've got Sunni, you've got, Hanafi, Maliki. I mean, you've got everything. You got the progressive. I mean, we have, and then all of the different ethnicities, Nigerian, Indonesian, Egypt. I mean, we got everything. And you don't find this in other parts of the Muslim world. Like I said, you go to Algeria, not only are you not going to find an imam whose name is Marc, you're not going to find an imam who is, Indonesian. You're not going to find an imam who's an Egyptian. You're not going to find an imam who's probably even a Moroccan in Algeria, right? They're going to be, right, Algerian, and probably 90% his name is Abdul Qadir. Rahimahullah, right? That's how it works. In a lot of the Muslim world, it's not diverse. And so we have to understand that we have a unique diversity here. And that's going to naturally bring about some clashes. I'm not saying that we justify the challenges and just let it stagnate and stay where it is. No, we have to, inshallah, try to overcome those. And again, not out of some altruistic sense, but because that is the command of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Let's make this very clear. The challenge to thwart and confront racism is a religious obligation based upon the Messenger alayhi salawatu wasalam, right? So let's make that very, it's not based upon some neo-Marxist, neo-Buddhist, we're not doing some mixed grab bag of other ideologies. No, it's simple. It's from Islam. You know, هذا هو الإسلام. This is what it is. So, you know, I would say though, it's the 21st century. You said like, oh, it's the 21st. I'm not making excuses, but at the same time, you know what? Racism ain't the biggest deal anymore.
Wait,
As black people, as a black person. Of course,
Whoa.
this is probably like my white privilege as a light-skinned, you know, mixed black person, right?
Okay, wait. Let me recap.
It's not the
here.
biggest deal anymore.
As a African American Muslim, you are saying that race is not the biggest deal for African Americans.
Nope.
Whoa.
Nope. Fight me, bro. Right?
Okay.
Fight me.
What's the biggest problem?
The biggest problem is shirk, right? The biggest problem is dhulam. The biggest problem is ma'asiyah, right? The biggest problems are what? People that associate partners with the law and then what? They become mustakbirun, right? Once you become a person that is a mushrik in your ideology, then everything is off limits. And you then become a person of extreme arrogance and extreme misguidance. And right, the biggest problem is morality. The biggest problem. I was listening to this exchange last night.
Who?
It was a short clip on YouTube from. I hate Bill Maher. I hate that dude. I really hate that dude.
I don't hate many people, but he's one of the people.
If I saw him, I would
yeah.
have to be restrained because I would want to just simply. I would like to punch that dude in his face. You know, I can't stand that dude. But anyway, I happened to stumble across this video because it was on his show, he had Ben Shapiro and who I also, oh man, talk about hate. I can't stand that dude's voice. The sound of Ben Shapiro's voice makes me want to commit random acts of violence. Right? So I had Ben Shapiro arguing with Malcolm Nance. I don't know if you're familiar with Malcolm Nance. He's a African-American dude that served in the military. He's very left. He's like on MSNBC. So anyway, so of course, here's the Zionist conservative Jew versus the black liberal who served in the military. You know, it's like some weird mix-up. Just I'm trying to even. Where was my thought on this? Like I was bringing this up.
We were talking about morality.
Oh, morality. Yeah, I mean, you know, I even lost my train of thought with this one now.
We started with you saying that racism
critical race
was
theory. So their conversation was over critical race theory.
Oh, another hot topic. Get ready, folks.
Which you know, and the point was that Ben Shapiro was like. Or rather, Malcolm Nance was saying, like, you know, the biggest problem in America is still racism, right? We have these racist institutions and it's like nobody says racism doesn't exist. And you know, and he brought up the story about his grandfather or great grandfather that was a slave and did. Hey, look, man, me too. I go back 4 generations and I have people who are in bondage as well, right? So, but that was 4 or 5 generations ago. This is my issue: is that. Why do I have to pick or choose? Because what I don't like about the Ben Shapiro types is they say racism doesn't matter anymore. Who said it doesn't matter? Of course it still matters. But in saying that it still matters, I don't want to have to become the Malcolm Nance critical race theorist that says it's still the predominant force acting upon black people's lives. That is just factually wrong.
Okay.
Right. This is the problem I have: is I have to choose one extreme or the other, which I also see happening in the Muslim community. You have Muslims who are now pro CRT, and then you have those who are vehemently against CRT. And neither one of them probably read much. Like they probably didn't read Delgado and Beverly, like Kimberly, and they didn't actually read.
We don't read much.
Right.
Period. So.
Right. Yeah. Muslims don't read their own book, let alone anything else. Right.
To be honest.
You know, my issue in that the reason why I brought up, you know, Ben Shapiro versus Malcolm Nance was like, wow, this is where we're at. We're in this absurdity. The absurdity to either deny or affirm at 100%. There's nothing in the middle, right? I mean, I almost got shot twice and killed by the police. Is police brutality a reality? Yes. Is it a reality that can potentially affect the lives of black people disproportionately than non-blacks? Absolutely. Nobody can argue this fact. But is there lurking behind every leaf and stone and bush and branch a cop waiting to kill me? No. Right? The biggest threat to why black people are not succeeding, and this is where I get on the liberals, is it's black people themselves. Nobody wants to have this conversation, right? And no, I'm not Larry Elder or I'm not Thomas Sowell, although there are some things that they say that are very interesting. What I don't like about the liberal, so-called modern liberal, and we can get into the difference between classical liberal and modern liberal.
Which I don't think you explained to me yesterday. They don't have much of a...
No, there is some overlap. The point is that black people have no agency. They have no role to play in their own definition of self and their own pursuit of destiny. This is what I absolutely loathe about modern liberalism. You mean to tell me the reason why I'm not achieving in life is because of white people, because of racism, because of structural this or that? No, the
like
reason
your agency's gone. You have
my agency is all gone.
You have no power over your
right. It's also removing God completely from the picture. But you know what? All ibtila ma asaba min musibatin illa bi'idhnillah. There are no trials or difficulties in this life except that they are from Allah. So it's also a very secular atheist point of view. So A, I have no agency as a human being. B, there is no God. And so C, I'm reduced to basically the state of a perpetual child. Right? I will always be the perpetual stepchild of modern liberalism. I have to be dependent upon your system.
You have to be dependent on the government for support. Same system.
I have to be dependent on the ideology. The government is just simply a manifestation of part of that ideology. I am dependent upon that ideology. I cannot feed myself, clothe myself, defend myself, achieve success unless there is some interventionist, some type of intervention, which John Rawls talked about. I mean, I don't mean to go into a crazy whirlpool tangent. There's just so many aspects to this that what makes me angry is the Muslims discuss this. Conservatism, liberalism, they don't even know the figures. They don't even know the people involved. Like, where do we get this idea of government interventionism in the lives, particularly of black people? Because, John Rawls, one of the most influential public philosophers of the 20th century.
I'm going to write that down, John.
What was his book? I specifically made some notes here, right, that I'll share with you if you want to put them up, on your show notes. But right, he wrote A Theory to Justice in 1971. Yeah. John Rawls came to be one of the most influential public philosophers of the 20th century. And coming from the being certainly one of the modern liberals. And his idea, many of them, one of them was what? Government needs to intervene. Now, I'm not saying that government intervention is necessarily a bad thing, right? Because obviously government, under certain circumstances, can do things individuals or even corporations can't, right? But it's different to say we will from time to time use government as a particular tool or apparatus versus it's just what does everything, right? I'm very uncomfortable with this. 2, it means that black people cannot be held to any moral standard, that they're false. It's like they're غير مكلفين. Like they don't have any taklif. They don't have any responsibility. I know from my own family and from other families. Like, look, man, if you have a bunch of kids out of wedlock, or you let a bunch of men have babies with you that are not your husband, what is going to be the result? And especially if that gets accepted as normative societal behavior.
Normalizing the single motherhood.
Normalizing fisq. Right? You just normalize immorality.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Right? You normalize immorality. I'm telling you right now, the biggest impediment to black success is morality and lack of imagination.
What do you mean by lack of imagination? Can you?
What is it most of us want to do? What do most black people want to do? Right?
Just be financially.
No. I mean, look. Growing up, I grew up around white people, black people. I learned to speak Japanese as a kid, right? Japanese people.
Wow, you speak Japanese?
I speak Japanese, right? And
okay, random factoid.
why is it that black families, the kids are, and I was the exception because I guess we're that sort of like talented 10th bougie Negro light skinned family, right? But most were pushing towards athletics and other things or coming from a broken family, right? Alhamdulillah, my parents have been married over 60 years. I came from a very solid family.
May Allah preserve them.
Right? I mean, may Allah, at this point, may Allah guide them.
May Allah guide them and preserve their marriage.
But what is the typical experience of the black family? Broken family. Right? We look at, even in the conversation between Shapiro and Nance, Maher invoked this thing about statistics. Black people are, the incarceration rate is higher than whites. Okay. I have no doubt that once you get to the sentencing aspect of the justice system, it is going to undeniably lean disproportionately towards blacks in terms of injustice. No doubt.
Yeah.
But the justice system didn't make black people commit crimes in the first place. This is something that the liberal is unwilling to acknowledge.
Well, wouldn't you say it's the lack of community resources, the fact that, there's
Well, whose job is it to have community resources?
The government.
No. It's black people's responsibility for black people's community to have resources. I'm sorry. Yes, at one point, this is why I did a piece last year when they were talking about this Tulsa, Oklahoma thing. They burnt down Black Wall Street. I said, you know what's amazing? Our people, black people, right? Just a couple of decades out of literal bondage, not this figurative nonsense people talk about today.
Like literally you were.
Literally
you're in chains.
In chains. A couple decades. Those same people that were in bondage went and built Black Wall Street. 40 years after bondage, they built Black Wall Street. Where are we at 40 years after civil rights? If we could build a Black Wall Street literally out of being chained and owned by other people, and we cannot do the same thing. I said, okay, they burnt it down. Why didn't we just go build another one?
This is the imagination part.
This is the imagination part. This is what really drives me insane with liberals and with my own people. And I know this makes me very unpopular with both. It makes me unpopular with a lot of black people, and it makes me unpopular with liberals because I cannot stand the fact that we could achieve such a monumental victory. This is where like Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said what, sometimes in this life, Allah will give fadl and tawfiq. He will give favor and success even to a kafir. If he's mukhlis, sincere. I mean, those slaves were not Muslim. I know there's this whole thing about, but okay, even if there were some Muslims by that point, they were not Muslims. And yet Allah gave them the fadl. And yes, it was evil what those white people did to go and burn down Black Wall Street. Was
100%.
An undeniable act of war and evil, right? No doubt. But my question is, since that time, why have we never gone and done it again? Where's our imagination? Why are we all talking about rap music and bars and being athletes and all this stuff? Where is our imagination? Where is our Langston Hughes now? Where is our Gordon Parks?
I'll be honest, I don't know who those names are.
Well, the point is, Langston Hughes, one of the great of the Harlem Renaissance, one of the great American poets. Forget about black poets. He was one of the great American poets. Gordon Parks, that iconic image you see of the black Muslim women who are not Muslim, right? In the Nation of Islam, there's a super iconic image of a bunch of black women in like the white hijab, and they're all like in a row, right? Gordon Parks is he's a photographer, right? Gordon Parks is one of the great American artists as well, who is a photographer.
Okay.
Thurgood Marshall,
Yeah.
where is our imagination now as black people? part of that imagination has been circumvented by the mediocrity of the left, right? When I say the mediocrity of the left, I'm not saying that the right is the place to go to, because they don't wish us any good either, right? I'm not trying to let the right off of the hook, right? But we are no longer in the time in which the major opponent of black achievement is the right. I know they're going to talk about Donald Trump and the tiki torches and the riot on Capitol Hill, right? That is not the major impediment to black success, right? The people that really live in our heads and we don't know that they're there and they're squatting,
living rent free,
is the left, right? We charge the right rent, right? The right lives in our head too, racism, right? But we're charging them rent. We're aware of them, right? Mm. The left, they're the squatters. We don't even know they're there. They're the ones that like go and open the electric box and they're stealing your electricity and right. That's the issue. And so and then again, immorality creates poverty. And this is, the Prophet ﷺ had so many things to say about, about, morality. Even, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh talked about the link and the relationship between, immorality and poverty. And it's true, right? Poverty, if you get pregnant at 15, 16, 17 years old, your life is going to either come to a fast halt or is going to be arrested for a very long time.
Yeah.
On top of it, you will now introduce a new norm because overwhelmingly those that are born out of wedlock go on to perpetuate that.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many families that out of wedlock births in Black America, right, that are 4, 5, 6 generations deep. Especially 4 or 5 generations. Now, ironically, like, my mom and dad, like my father, man, he's like one of those, he just shakes his head like, I don't understand black people today. He's like one of them old, he's like, I don't understand black people today. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why don't they go get a job? If you can't get a good education, at least go get a job, man. What are you running around here, having sex with all these women, knocking up all these women? Why are you letting all these guys come and knock you up, having all these babies out of wedlock, right? And then you want to turn around and talk about white supremacy. White supremacy is not the major issue anymore. Immorality is, and in truth, always has been. Because white supremacy in itself is immoral, right? The biggest problem is always immorality and not recognizing the right of Allah, the maqam of Allah, right? The right that you fear Him, obey Him, and you constrain yourself. وَمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. Right? The one who fears the station of their Lord and then refuses that part of themselves. Maybe you're a racist, but you know what? I'm going to keep that stuff wrapped up inside because what? Inni akhaf Allah. I fear Allah. Or you know what? Man, that woman over there, she's very beautiful. I would really, but you know what? Either I'm going to get married or I'm going to restrain myself. Immorality is still the biggest impediment to black life. I will die on that hill. I will fight tooth and nail on that hill. And I challenge anybody to bring me any other demonstration that explains the continued predicament and lack of success in Black America.
I'll play the devil's advocate with you. Systemic oppression. There's
white people are just as immoral. Someone might say.
Yeah, white people are just as immoral.
You don't think they have
white collar crime? There's hillbillies, white trash, and white people are still succeeding. And let's see, police brutality. If black men are being arrested at a high rate than white men,
there's still okay. Yes, white people are immoral. Chinese people are immoral. Everybody's immoral, right? People struggle with morality across the board, right? But also, black people, again, we disproportionately commit crimes. Again, once you get in the system, I got no doubts about the fact that it is definitely going to lean heavily against you more than it would a non-black person. No doubt about it. But it doesn't cause you to commit crimes. There's no justification for you to commit the crimes in the first place. And we have come to have an attitude now that we are either somehow we can indulge, right, this desire to commit crimes, or that we are entitled to something that we simply don't have the title and deed for, right? I know this doesn't sound very popular, and this whole thing about structural racism. Again, I did a podcast with Dr. Abdullah a year or two ago, and he and
Abdullah bin Hamid.
Yeah, bin Hamid Ali.
I think he kind of is on the same wavelength as.
So in that podcast, for instance, we differed where he was saying like there is no more structural racism, and I said I don't know if I can go that far. I think that certainly there still are. What I'm saying is it is no longer an unsurmountable obstacle. It's no longer an insurmountable obstacle, right? And this is what I don't like about the left, is that they constantly want to remind us about racism and evil white people and all this stuff, right? And you know what? I don't care about racism and evil white people. I'm going to go out and achieve, because you know what? Anyway, tawfiqi billah. My success is ultimately going to come from Allah. And if with Allah's, blessing, I can achieve any obstacle. I can surmount any challenge or obstacle. And in fact, if he doesn't, then I won't achieve anything, right? That, I want to make the major focus in my life as a black person, Allah, right? That Allah is the one who bestows fadl. He is the one that withholds, right? He is the one that's either going to give or is going to take away. And whiteness is just a particular manifestation of that. I do not want to turn whiteness into a kind of ilah, right? Something that almost is a type of God, like an anti-God, right? It's this sort of like negative anti-God for some people, right?
To the point that if a white person wants to convert,
well, it's like they worship Allah by loathing white people. Like, this is where a lot of the Muslim community is unfortunately kind of slipping and going towards, is like, nu'minu billah wa na'budu al-abyad. We believe in Allah, but we worship white people. Right? And I don't mean that in the dunya way. I mean that our value set, the limits of our imagination, the limits of what we conceive as possibilities are all now circumscribed by whiteness. I don't care what white people have to say, in the idea of that, I'm going to go out and try to do it because Allah has made me to worship Him. And He said, whatever that Allah has given you, seek your part of this world. So I'm not putting on blinders. What I'm saying is, it's not the most important conversation in the room, and it's not the highest hurdle to jump over.
I agree. And I think this ties into an overarching theme that, we discuss here on the podcast. It's that, you are essentially, with Allah, you as a man who has Allah, right, you can accomplish anything, right, within means. And, the idea of, being a victim, as if you really try to embody that masculine energy, then that is something that's not compatible.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, liberalism is as for men, liberalism is a real feminine energy to it, right? It wants to disempower you. It wants you to, and again, I'm not advocating for a kind of like the go at your own John Wayne rugged individual type of nonsense. No, I do believe there is a communitarian. Why is it that there are some cultures, or some groups and their cultures that come to America, despite not being white, achieve success and have faced similar, if not quite in magnitude, but similar racism throughout the history of this country, and yet they categorically and statistically achieve more success. This is what I'm saying.
They absorb whiteness into
okay, I'm just going to be honest. Like, let's just look at the Asian community.
That's what Asian community.
Let's look at the Asian community.
That's what it is,
right?
Yeah.
And so my thing, and as somebody that grew up with a lot of Asians, Japanese, learned to speak the language, studied the culture, everything. Are Japanese people perfect? No. Do I wish I was Japanese? Or it's none of that nonsense. It's just that, they do things somewhat different. They have faith. I mean, my God, man, they locked them people up during World War II. There were mass lynchings of Chinese people, and yet there are some different community and cultural attitudes that they have that we could benefit from. This is my issue also with this idea of cultural appropriation. I have done I have done cultural appropriation my whole entire life. If I find somebody that has something in their culture that's beneficial to me, I appropriate it. Full stop. I have no problem with it. And humans have appropriated culture from other cultures since the beginning of, Qabil and Habil, from Cain and Abel. I don't want to hear anything about cultural, but this is a bunch of nonsense, right? If I find something beneficial in an Arab culture, I will appropriate it. If I find something in Indonesian culture I will appropriate it. So be on the lookout, right? I'm going to do a home invasion on you and take all of your culture. Right, this is ridiculous, right? Yeah. That's the thing is, liberalism also wants to draw these, like you're a black person, you must fit into this, neat little box, and you can't go outside of it. And cultural appropriation, and now you hear black people complaining about, so and so is incorporating hip hop. Hip hop is just what? It's music, it's notes, it's rhythms. Are you kidding me? What, do you think you have an intellectual property right to that? This is insane. Instead of wanting to constantly, why don't you just continue to make your culture better?
And I feel like cultural appropriation, even though the term has such a negative connotation, the more this happens, the more other cultures appreciate other cultures. And I feel like that would aid in, the intermingling of people. Right? Like, it's like, oh, you're doing this because you find a benefit, and this is something my culture created. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do? And I feel like that's how you create community, right? It's because it's not like I'm stealing something from you and I'm going to take it and.
Yeah, number one, I can't take, if I say, what, I really like, I don't know, like I have some Palestinian friends. I really like maqluba. So I'm going to come and I'm gonna start making maqluba for dinner every night, right? Well, it's cultural. Okay, even if I make maqluba for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single night, does that stop Palestinians from still eating maqluba? Does it still stop them from being? I don't know. I don't know if they're the originators of maqluba, but I'm saying, like, does that take anything away from them? I think this is ridiculous.
I think where people get upset is I don't know if you remember, was it last year or the year before, there was like this new health craze of like turmeric. Remember that? Everyone was on turmeric pills. It's like, it's good for your inflammation and all that stuff. And our cultures, we cook a lot with that spice, and it's just normal to us. But it wasn't that craze. And that wasn't capitalized on by us. It was like white people, right? They're the ones who they were selling all these.
Yeah, they're the same with Miswak, if you remember that.
Yeah,
but I'm saying,
I think that goes back to a lack of imagination. We've been using it. Why didn't we make money on it? Why did someone else?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Nothing stopping you. And if white people want to make turmeric pills or turmeric smoothies or what does that got to do with you, man?
Oh, well, they took that from me. I'm the one who's using turmeric. They took it, and now they're making money on it, and I'm not making money on it, so I'm upset.
Yeah, well, I guess you're going.
Not me personally, but you know what I mean.
I think I think all of this. Some people are allowing themselves to be coached into misery. Ooh. It's like there's like some life coach out there just coaching people to constantly be miserable about this or that. Versus be happy about who you are. Work on making yourself better, and you also never know what you will get in the exchange of that so-called appropriate. That's such a stupid term. Honestly, that you want to cancel the term cultural appropriation. That's such a stupid term.
Hey, man, Mark, do you have any advice for a young Muslim, like I'm talking 20 to 30, African American specifically? I mean, we can't really speak to any of those kinds of experiences, and I think we've never discussed this topic on the podcast really because we have no say, no experience at all. But our viewership is varied, but we are in that age range. So is there any specific advice you would have?
In the spirit of giving advice, I would actually challenge your false assumption. Why can't you give black people advice? It's because you're not black. Who said that you cannot give black people advice because you're not black? This is, again, where are we getting these ideas from? This is nonsense. When we were walking in here, both of you told me, okay, Munir, you said that you're a seminary student, but you work as a biomedical
engineer.
So you made COVID. Okay, so Munir made COVID. And you said you're a civil engineer.
No.
Okay. Okay, you're a seminary student, you're not, but both of you seem to take your Islam very seriously, right? But you also know that just being a student of knowledge, it ain't gonna cut it. You have a 2.5-year-old son. Inshallah, you and your wife hope to have kids soon, right? All the knowledge in the world ain't gonna feed no babies. You know what I mean? All the religious knowledge in the world ain't gonna put no bread on the table, right? So why would you not feel comfortable to say, you know what, I really think that African Americans should, as Muslims, should definitely learn their religion, but should also maximize their earning power, especially given their historical predicament of having been disenfranchised from economic empowerment. Why can you, as Egyptian and Lebanese, why can you not go tell some black people, hey man, get your money right, get your deen right, and get your money right? Why is that not appropriate?
So I think, to be fair, that's general advice.
Because that's what I would tell to answer your question. That would be my answer.
All right.
Get your deen right and get your money right.
That's no different than advice we give to anyone else. So I think the point he was trying to make is we couldn't give black appropriate advice, if specific, if you want to put it that way. Like to speak to an experience that we don't have, not general advice. Like, of course, get your deen right.
Do you have any empirical evidence to support that theory that you cannot give black specific advice?
I don't have any no, I don't. But this is just.
But you're operating on that assumption that you can't.
Yes, well, no, this is just based on my reading of the, socio-political blogosphere landscape, whatever you want to call it.
Let me tell you something about black people.
This is, you can't, this is, okay, I mean, let's be frank, right? The whole race discussion has become so charged that I myself feel like, okay, you know what? There are just some red lines for me that I'm not going to cross because I really, I don't want to make anyone upset. I don't want to step on any toes. So I'm just going to ask whoever is the, expert or the person who
I'm not an expert on blackness. I am black, but I'm not an expert on blackness, right? There's a difference, right? Well, so what I'm saying is that, let me tell you something about my own people. Okay, yes, we live in a moment where always some vocal minority is making a lot of noise, but overall, black people tend to be fairly chill and fairly open to other cultures.
Okay.
Right? We tend to be, hey, if that's something, especially you talking about money, hey man, if you give me some advice, something that can put some extra bread in my pocket, I'm probably going to take that advice, right?
Yeah. Buy assets.
And
don't
so
buy
what I mean is
like
that I don't feel, I really, again, I highly benefited in the early part of my life of being heavily influenced by non-black people, right? I have a very solid black identity, right? Here I am, almost 50 years old, grumpy, bald, old black man, right? But I'm very comfortable in my skin. But I have benefited my whole entire life by being influenced by and learning from other cultures. And so I say this, that yes, my advice would be learn your deen and get a good paying career, skill, right? I mean, when I worked in IT, and this is something that always used to really make my blood boil. All this talk about, structural racism. Hey, look, man, when I worked in IT at the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm not talking about just at the School of Design, like there was decentralized IT, so you'd work for but then there was also just the IT at the whole school. Penn is a huge school. So you're talking about hundreds of IT employees. Man, I was like one of 3 brothers working up in there. And what make me angry is that why are there not more black people in IT? It's the one industry. Nobody cares if you even have a degree. I didn't graduate from, despite what Ahmed Yunus said, right? I didn't graduate from college until 2012. I spent I converted to Islam 18, spent my 20s studying Islam, and then spent my 30s kind of trying to figure out who I was going to be, and then, got on with life. So I didn't graduate until I was almost 40 years old, right? And so I worked in IT, though, most of that time, making good money. Why? Nobody cares.
As long as you can do the job.
As long as you can code, program, install, nobody really cares. And so if indeed higher education is a barrier to African Americans because of the prohibitive cost, which, okay, fine, then why not go into IT? Learn to code. I did. I taught myself web development. Right?
Wow.
I didn't go to any school for that stuff.
And that's before all the online resources.
Oh, this is way. I mean, oh man, if I had YouTube in my 20s, forget about it, right? So I did all of this way, before that, and it's again, I'd be like one of three black people working in IT. Why aren't you going into this field, right? What do you? And it used to drive when I did go to Temple, and I would kick it with the Black Student Union and other like, oh, what are you getting your degree in? Black Studies. Black Studies, bro. Just buy some books on you, put them on. You don't need to go do all that. African American Women's Studies, English. You plan to eat with that degree? Meanwhile, the Kashmiri sister, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going into biology and then pre-med. Oh, what's the Korean cat? Oh, he's doing business or he's doing computer science. Every black person was like some humanities degree. What are you doing? You're shooting yourself in the foot. You don't need to go, if a black person, you don't need to go and study African American studies. What's wrong with you? Do you see Arabs going there and getting a degree in Islamic sciences? No, they're not. I'm going to be a muhandis. I'm going to become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. Like, what are you thinking? This is what I'm saying. The imagination and the thinking process, we have to challenge it for the betterment, not to be self-hating or berating black people. No. We got to start making better decisions, right? That's what it comes down to. No, I don't believe in any of this eugenics nonsense. It's just that some people have better, and sometimes that decision-making process has gone from being only the individual to a cultural thinking process. Right? I mean, if you break it down to the individual level, in my experience, being Muslim for 30 years, I see Arabs, Pakistanis, Nigerians, Indonesia, I see them all making horrible decisions sometimes. But one decision they don't make that's horrible is their career. Right? They might make some other bad decisions in their life, but one thing that they don't tend to make
secure the bread
collectively, right? And so that means that you don't have to only rely on your personal genius. This is one of the uplifting aspects of culture. So black people we need to have a new conversation in Black America to have a new kind of black culture that is, you know what? Nah, man, you can't go and become a teacher. Okay, I'm not saying, somebody's got to teach, but I'm just saying you're not all going to aspire to something greater. At least, like I always laugh, like, in a lot of parts of the Arab world, right? It's like the people that couldn't cut it as a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, that's who becomes the imam.
Yeah, that's the truth.
You know what? that might not be a half bad plan to have. Now it's like, the opposite. Like, you go into all these humanities and it's the rare person that becomes a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. No, man, flip that stuff. We need to have a new imagination. So my advice to, young Black American Muslims would be absolutely learn your deen, because one, there's no guarantee. Learn your deen so that you go back to Allah in the best condition that you can be in, right? Because kullu nafsin da'iqatul maut, and we don't know, tomorrow is not promised. And so indeed, that being said, you don't have to chew up your whole 20s like I did, right? Learning Islam, right? So learn your deen, do it quick and fast, and then secure a skill. And particularly in this emerging global kind of civilization that we have, get something you could pick up your sticks and your marbles and take them somewhere else. Start thinking cosmopolitan and global. Start thinking about, truly generational. Think about what it would be like for you to be able to take your family on Hajj. Like, I know so many, so-called immigrant Muslim, Desi, Arab, whatever, that, you see them, not all of them, but many of them. They go to Hajj, they go to Umrah, they go this and that, they travel, right? Black people, we don't go nowhere. Why? We ain't got the money, right? But you know what? Give your children those experiences, Give them that experience. I think in some ways we need to expand Blackness as, it needs to break out of its kind of, parochial, colloquial, it's hemmed in.
I feel like with the liberal dialogue, it's like in a box, like you said, to the point that even if you have a Black conservative who you may or may not agree with, that there's white liberals calling that person an Uncle Tom, which I just think.
But to keep it real though, okay, yeah, white people might do that, but who's the biggest antagonist of Black conservatives? Black liberals. We can talk about white people calling Black people Uncle Tom. Who cares, right? But let me tell you, the biggest adversary that you will face will be other Black people, right? Black people are in many ways and Dr. J has talked about this. Some of the biggest white supremacists are Black people. You said Dr. J, talking about Dr. Sherman Jackson.
Dr.
Sherman Jackson, right? I mean, in terms of, we have been programmed to accept the precepts and the concepts of, right? And so we come to, we talk about all this, colorism. Some of the most color-struck people on the planet are Black people. And we can't all say it's because of, that was because of colonialism. Colonialism or slavery may have indeed amplified, but it did not always be the inception for it. You go to Sudan, in some of their poetry and singing, what do they call a beautiful woman? Because people from Sudan are dark, right? What do they call a beautiful Sudani woman?
I don't know.
Lemuni. Lemon. Well, a lemon is what? It's kind of lighter in color. Like, look, we have to be honest about ourselves. Yes, indeed, colonialism and racism, white supremacy, they played their roles at certain parts in history. But we also have to be honest that some parts are also just internal. We cannot offload everything onto whiteness. That's why now we have this idea that the biggest problem in the world is white supremacy. And if we could just solve this white supremacy problem, there'll be no problems tomorrow. There'll be no more stealing, no more murder, no more everything. Like, we'll get rid of all immorality will be solved if we just get rid of white supremacy. This is nonsense, right? There's always this, fictitious, utopian kind of ideology. There's no Jannah but Jannah.
That is very well stated.
There's no Jannah but Jannah. And so as long as we keep, this is why I said to you yesterday, and for many Muslims, the greatest sin now is
Racism.
not shirk.
Yeah.
Right? And you see Muslims, you have people that pass away, clearly not a Muslim. Mushrik.
Clearly a Muslim.
Rest in peace, this and that, right?
You don't know what his heart, what's in his heart.
You don't know what's in his heart. Okay, you don't know what was in Osama bin Laden's heart either when he died. When they buried him, when they gave him his janazah at sea. I'm still looking for that one in the abwab of the books of fiqh. I'm still trying to find that janazah at sea. Right? You don't know what was maybe he repented.
Saddam Hussein made shahada before he got hung.
Yeah, man. You know, Gaddafi, you don't know what was in his heart when they choked him out on the streets and shot him and did whatever they did to him, right? You don't know. Now, will you find anybody that go, oh, may Allah have mercy on him? Oh, no, man. I can't be saying no rahimahullah to bin Laden, man. Are you kidding me? Chuck is breathing down my neck, man. Right? So, and again, I'm not saying that, I'm not advocating one way or the other, right? But I remember in Philadelphia years ago when I was living there, some unfortunately heavily misguided young people committed an atrocious crime. First, they dressed up as Muslim women. Men, they dressed up as Muslim women in niqab.
Whoa. Wait, where was this?
Philly.
In Philly, okay.
And then they went and robbed, it was either a store or a bank.
Wow.
And in the process of trying to get away, they killed a police officer.
Okay.
And when that happened, of course, this is, post 9/11, man, nobody wanted to touch them. Nobody wanted to deal with them. And some people were like, man, we should bury them as kafirs. And I said, hey. What they did was heinous. And what they did was a major sin. But they are still Muslim, and they are still owed the rights of Muslims. Now, I'm not saying it's got to be a big gathering, but 3 people, they got to wash their body, and they got to pray for them. I don't care who they are. That's what they get as a Muslim. Right? And so we've arrived at that time now where you have people that commit heinous crimes. All of their rights as a Muslim are stripped. And then you have people that die clearly outside of Islam, and they're bestowed that which Allah forbade for his messenger. Alayhi salatu salam. When Abu Talib died, you can't go make dua for him. Even when he wanted to visit his mother's grave. Now you can cry, you can get emotional, but you can't make no dua.
Yeah, so people would understand, like, saying rest in peace, you're trying to say rahimallah in a sense.
Man, what is rest in peace? What is rest in peace? Meaning what? You will not be subjected to your outcome in the al-aqibah fi al-akhirah fi Jannah. Your outcome in the hereafter is going to go to Jannah.
So we can, as Muslims, we cannot pray for a non-Muslim after they die.
As a Muslim, you cannot, and as a Muslim as well. As a Muslim and as a Muslim, you cannot pray for somebody who has died outside of Islam. Now, as I always say, is the caveat. Just because I don't pray for a person, look, if whatever is, you don't know what happened in his heart. If that's true, then he will go to Jannah or she will go to Jannah. If that's what Allah has determined for them. Mm-hmm. Whether I pray for them or don't, look, who we pray for or who we don't pray for, that is not the ultimate arbiter of where people go or don't go.
Yeah.
What it is about وَمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ, it's about fearing and respecting the position of your Lord. Allah said, don't pray for those who did not clearly die upon Islam. Full stop. Now, where they go? As we say, Allahu A'lam.
There's rules for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his own.
Hey.
That's it.
And therefore, it ain't about the person. It's about me and my Lord. Allah has given me a command. Sama'na wa ta'ana. That's it.
We listen, we hear, we obey. We obey.
Right? And that's the part we didn't even get to, right? Is that what is one of the big problems with liberalism? Is it makes the self, its emotions, and its experiences the determiner of truth, good, and beauty.
And morality.
Well, good, truth, and beauty. Okay. Right? Yeah. It's the author of all morality, of truth. So therefore, if I feel away, think away, whatever, right? There's no idea that, you know what, I have to bring my feelings in alignment, even though I may not like it. You
Yep.
know, I may have really liked Black Panther. I may have really liked that movie, and Chadwick Boseman seemed like a really cool dude. And I saw him having a conversation with Omar Suleiman, and he seemed like, you know what, he probably was he seems like an honestly really nice person. But he did not die on Islam in any way that you or I can recognize. And so all I'm saying is, it is a disobedient act to flagrantly make dua for him, though Allah has commanded us not to do so. Simple as that. Now again, you could pray for him 100,000 times. That ain't got nothing to do with what's going to happen to him.
It's about you and your relationship with Allah.
It's about you and Allah. It ain't about you. That person, man, you know, it's done now. That's what people don't understand. But they say, no. My feelings are king. My feelings, you know, are both the qalam and the lawh.
And I think that is the, you know, the biggest issue. If that gets in your heart, where the idea is that your feelings are king, you know, because I see these, you know, these altercations on Facebook, not altercations, you know, whatever, people arguing back and forth, and it's like, well, it just doesn't feel right. Why can't I say rest in peace? You know, I feel bad about it, so I feel uncomfortable. So it must not be uncomfortable. It must be wrong, and that's that people are uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Because they have been
coddled.
They've been coached into being creatures of comfort, and therefore religion is the only purpose of religion is to make me comfortable. And the minute it don't make me comfortable, I'm throwing it right out the window. Like people cannot be some people cannot be religious and uncomfortable. To me, that's when people say, I'm spiritual but not religious. Oh, that means you are not capable of being uncomfortable.
That was actually our previous guest. We just had, you know, Abdurrahman Haikal with Peace and Power, and he has he coaches people in fitness, and he has like a 10-week program. And majority of it isn't really about working out and do these reps. He's just addressing you as a person. And one of the weeks, he literally makes you do something uncomfortable. Part of his process is he finds out like your biggest fear.
Yeah.
And then he makes you face it. Like there was a guy who was scared of the ocean. And then they did a workout at the beach, and at the end of the workout, he like pulls out swim trunks. He's like, we're doing this. So he made that guy go through some sort of adversity, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not what's going on nowadays. If it's not easy, it's not for me. If it's hard, if it doesn't make me feel good, if it's uncomfortable, then it's wrong. It's evil. It's not the truth. And anything that is the truth should make me feel good. And
what's funny is like Mubin Bain makes a very good point about this. He said, think about the toughest universities to get into, the prestige of all of these things, Harvard, Yale, Ivy League, UC grad schools. Are they easy? Are they easy to get into? No. Is there struggle while you're in there? Yes.
Sure.
Everything about it is struggle. Med school, law school. Think about any upper division thing. The more struggle, the more prestige. And yet when it comes to religion and God Almighty, it's got to be easy. If I have to struggle a little bit, it must not be the one for me. You put that center on anything but your own religion with God, it seems, you know, out of sorts.
And they've twisted it where, ironically, the one area that religion should comfort us in is in our pain, in times of difficulty. And you will find people, man, you know, like when they experience something traumatic in their life, instead of utilizing religion to help comfort in them, that, man, they wind up leaving the faith. They lose their faith. And that's because those are the same people all along that have been trying to employ religion to somehow secure them, or to essentially dodge the draft of life where they don't have to go through difficulties, right? I mean, you know, look, man, I've been praying, fasting, man, where's my stuff? Yeah, Allah, man, where's my stuff?
Prosperity doctrine.
Right? Yeah, I mean, and so ironically, when you get to some real deep, dark, heavy stuff in their life, they ain't got nothing left, and they don't know how to employ religion in their life in the correct way, and they become faithless. I mean, in my opinion, I know this will be very some people might. This is what I feel happened with like Anthony Bourdain. You have Anthony Bourdain. He's like one of these real snarky dudes, you know, right? And when it came time when life hit him with some stuff, he couldn't deal. You know, and then now people want to say, oh, mental health, mental health. That's such an overdiagnosed term, as if like what? People that have mental health also maybe just don't have bad character. You know, Muslims have been unfortunately coached into viewing the objective of religion is to live a good life.
Live a good, easy life.
Versus, well, you know, live a good life versus to how to get out of life.
We're all going to be like in the Wall-E movie.
Yeah. Atheists say the same thing, by the way. My coworkers, that they'll talk about when they want to talk about religion or whatever, say, like, none of them are religious, obviously, because that's the world we live in. Say, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about leaving the world better than you left it or something. But it's like, where are you coming up with these ideas or this good, right? They're just what you talked about. Like, this is literally what they talk. They have no other way to cope.
And you find the Muslims now adopting this
about having
new
a good life
nonsense. Yeah.
Define good. I didn't want to push back.
Number one, it's already been defined as good. You're acting and behaving. Okay, the atheist, the kafir, fine, I get it. They're not Muslim.
Yeah.
But why are you, the Muslim, acting as if goodness has already not been defined? It has been completely defined and
refined, and
it's been written in all but stone by Allah and His Messenger. Like, that is what good is. It's in that book and it's in His life. Study it, learn it, right? Then you will know what is good. Versus this ever continually evolving, in my opinion, devolving.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right? I mean, if we can go from just 100 years ago to essentially being there in ijma' on planet Earth that sodomy is disgusting and wrong, to where there's now almost a new emergent ijma' that it's good. This shows you, right? This has to show you, like, this is why we have this timeless book and this message to tell us what is good, right? It tells us, and so therefore, if I encounter somebody that does something that is outside of that, it doesn't mean I have to strip them of any value as a human being, but it also doesn't mean I'm going to allow them to abrogate what has already been defined as good. Agreed. Especially for somebody that's going to wink in and out of existence in a blink of an eye. And it comes in this life and
like this,
pees and poops on themselves and might even leave in the same state if they live long enough. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to let this one be the arbiter of truth? I don't think so.
So I think to summarize that point, it's, you know, and this is general advice for everybody. Learn your Islam. Learn your deen. Find a teacher. If you don't have a teacher by you, there are many online programs you can enroll in. There is CIU, California Islamic University. There's our lovely IOK, Institute of Knowledge. Imam Marc, I think you also do some online programs that you post, right, every now and then?
Very little. I focus mainly on in-person learning.
Which is the best? If you're able to make it out to...
People ask me, okay, is the class going to be recorded? No. I occasionally put things up, and I'll put up little short videos, but no. My main, like, I teach a tafsir class every week and whatnot, and that's, like I said, sometimes it goes for like 3 hours.
Wow.
No, I'm not just putting that up on the internet. Because number one, nobody paid. No, trust me. When I've done that on a few occasions, I look at the YouTube analytics. Nobody watches that stuff. Nobody's really. And this is why Muslims are ignorant. Come on. You could literally have a PhD in any topic, in any Islamic science of what's available now on YouTube. Nobody watches this. How the Muslims are still, you know, this is all this posted YouTube. I mean, show up, you know, and like in real life, like don't just learn your deen, but then continue some professional development, right? Continue to
find a trade. That's the whether
but I mean,
it's
even in your Islam. I mean, even like learn your deen, then go get a career, and then for the rest of your life try to develop these both, especially your deen.
Nah.
Right, because I find that sometimes Muslims kind of get an arrested development when it comes to their religion. You know, they may really go far in their career, but then there's still
some peak in MSA.
yeah, exactly.
You peak in your college years, which is
Continue your professional development.
Yeah.
And that means that invest in your community. Invest in people being able to do this kind of thing full time. Like I tell people, I'm able to do what I do at Middle Ground because I do it full time. If I did it part time, it would not have the same efficacy. It would not have the same intensity. It would not have the same, inshallah, benefit. There's a benefit from having a teacher that can, or having institutions that can operate where you have some people that do this thing, full time. Think about institution building. Think about, and when I say institution building, investing in yourself.
Investing in yourself. So, do you mean you're talking about the financial side of things, or you mean just
IOK doesn't run on dua.
That's part of it,
Right.
but no, they have a whole team of people who manage the finances, and they manage the what's the fund called?
Sister Sarah that works in the front desk in administration or whatever. She doesn't pay her rent on dua.
No,
or whatever. I'm just saying, the people that work here, they're not,
Yeah.
So and of course, many hands make light work. So if people collectively work together, then and then you can really bring some, mass benefit. This is why I feel, to I guess to complement this, and maybe the last part about white supremacy, all this racism. Look, man, if Muslims don't get serious about giving da'wah to white people in America, I don't think this project's going to work.
That's we can't just close on a statement. Do you need to go? Do you have another commitment?
A wife texting me, "Where are you?" Every 20 minutes.
He's like, "Man, I'm with this dude."
Just shoot her a message real quick. Be like, the conversation.
I'll end with this. I'll make it real short. Right?
We don't gotta end.
So I was watching The Matrix yesterday.
I don't gotta be nowhere.
Right? I was watching The Matrix.
I know you support them, but that's okay.
They came out, right? The brothers.
Oh yeah. They're crazy.
But not just that. The Matrix
always been
has been and always been a trans story. That was,
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I'm going to culturally appropriate The Matrix now for my own right. So I had actually written down, because it struck me. We had our conversation.
Yeah.
Then I wound up watching The Matrix, and then there's that sort of dialogue, almost monologue, in the training part between Morpheus. And Neo. And the second one, where he has the agent program with the woman in the red dress.
Okay.
And he says, freeze the program.
Yeah.
And then they have this conversation about who the agents are, right? And so he says that, there are these, Neo asked, well, who are these agents? He said, they're sentient programs. I'm going to read you the dialogue. I wrote it down. He said, they can move in and out of any software hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent, right? Inside the Matrix, they are everyone and they are no one. But this part especially, so we have survived by hiding from them and by running from them. And this is what I feel about both immigrant Islam in America and also black Islam in America.
We're running from white people?
We have survived mainly by running from whiteness and hiding from whiteness. And now we're kind of like that barking dog, but we're not really engaging whiteness, right? And he said, they are the gatekeepers, right? Historically, has Islam been able to take root in a place if the predominant group of people didn't embrace Islam?
No, eventually they convert.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? He said, they are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys. Now, what I mean by this is not that if all white people don't convert to Islam, that it's not successful. But they are guarding the doors in many ways to our own self-actualization because we're so concerned about them. To a great degree, we might talk all this stuff today about white supremacy, but to a large degree, we're still running from them. They still define how we think, how we even our creative process, our imaginative process, right? He says, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them. Now, I'm not saying we fight, but sooner or later, we're going to have to engage white society seriously on the da'wah tip. Right? We're going to have to we most certainly cannot proceed with this attitude of anti-whiteness. I mean, as you mentioned, right, I think Jordan Peterson was supposed to have Hamza Yusuf on his podcast or vice versa or whatnot. Canceled. And this campaign ensued of like not only wanting to cancel Sheikh Hamza Yusuf.
Happens like every week.
Well, I mean, occasionally Sheikh Hamza, I love him, but occasionally he says some stuff that also sometimes is not always the best. Right? But again, canceling people, this is ridiculous. I'm sorry. For the people that have their issues with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, you know what? The man built a university. You know what? Show me what you've done.
And that was like one thing.
I'm sorry, but it's like, you know what? This man alone, probably since Malcolm X, is responsible for the most people either becoming Muslim or remaining in Islam in the Western world. Now, I've had my critiques of Sheikh Hamza, but I'm sorry. He is hands down one of the greatest da'iyat of our age. And the man has gone on to build a university. And I'm not saying this, I'm not affiliated with Zaytuna, I'm not Sufi, I'm not Ash'ari, I am Maliki, but I'm not a Zaytunite, I'm not a Sheikh Hamza'ite, I'm not a fanboy. I'm just being honest. He is like the greatest living da'iyat. I mean, okay, maybe he and Bilal Phillips could have like a, some type of cage match, of terms of who is the greatest da'i, right, in the modern time, right? So I say that, they wanted to go cancel this man. Are you out of your mind? Right? And then they wanted to make dua that
Jordan Peterson doesn't convert.
Wouldn't be guided to Islam.
And moratoriums on masajid to not give him, to not help him convert. If he wanted to convert.
This kind of craven attitude that Morpheus was talking about to Neo.
Yeah. That was nuts.
At some point, you gotta confront these agents. Because then it's not about the agents, it's about you.
Yeah. You only say these things if you think you have control over guidance. Like you have to, that's like an act of shirk. You can't possibly be like, don't convert this man unless you actually think you have control over guidance.
Well, it's funny. It actually was like that man, that kind of raw Bedouin man that said to the Prophet, eventually, okay, I accept Islam. May Allah have mercy on me and upon Muhammad and nobody else. And the Prophet said, like, you have constricted something very vast. You are attempting to constrict something very vast. That's like this kind of woke anti-white nonsense we have now, right? And that means that part of being Muslim, part of giving da'wah is to deal with people that, some of these people, you don't really like everything about them. Do you think the Prophet ﷺ loved his people? At the same time, he went to war with them. Right?
They starved his community at some point. They killed his family.
They killed his family. Even when Wahshi, finally accepted Islam, he was like, "Hey man, I don't want to see your face." Because, Hamza, for me, people forget the Prophet ﷺ and Hamza, it wasn't just his uncle. They were wet nurse together. So because of their proximity of age, they were close. It was more like a big brother.
Yeah.
To see your big brother get speared to death on the battlefield, and then the dude that killed him is like, "Oh yeah, I'm part of your community now." Even the Prophet ﷺ was like, alhamdulillah, that's good for you, but man, I can't deal with seeing your face.
And that's something for us Muslims here we gotta work past, because if someone is racist and they want to be a Muslim, it's like, oh well, I don't really like him being a Muslim. It's like, well, if being a Muslim is going to help get rid of him being a racist, like why wouldn't you?
Not only just that, okay.
Racist is one thing, but like any person. It's going to
help the overall project of Islam, and it's going to help society, right? Because that person, he could become Muslim and still maybe remain a racist. I mean, in fact, there are racist Muslims, right?
True.
But to raise the water level overall, even though, okay, maybe that boat has some holes in it, but I want to raise the water level overall for the possibility of this whole project. I want to raise the potential and the possibility for the human story, for mankind. That means I'm going to have to sometimes allow some people to be a part of this thing that I personally don't really have a lot of love for.
Yeah.
You can respect
But
them.
I don't even have, I'm invested in this overall project.
Yeah.
Right? Because number one, it's Allah's desire, what? That He wants to bring mankind out of darkness into light. Well, how are you going to bring people, how are you going to bring people from darkness to light? What do you think? Everybody's going to be, you're bringing Abu Bakrs, you're bringing, no, you're going to bring people with darkness. You know, I mean, they got people with bad character, people with all kinds of faults. What do you think that's going to be an easy process? It's not going to be like a 22-minute episode of Thundercats. You know, it's going to be a major process.
Yeah.
You know, they want to make it like a Hanna-Barbera production where it's like in the span of 19 minutes, you know, all problems are solved.
Impossible.
You guys are probably too young to know about Hanna-Barbera, but it's okay.
I know Thundercats.
Okay.
Thundercats was the
That was like the probably the last bit of a reference I get from that era.
But no, it's it just was funny. I wound up, you know, watching that yesterday, and it just made me think, like, yeah, you know, at some point, Islam in America has got to get serious about giving dawah to everybody.
But if the overall population is white,
right,
so
right.
that's what it
like
is.
we've been in some ways, I would say, you know, the overall project of Islam, which is like just statistically, there's more immigrants than black people, right? So the project of Islam has been limping along and hiding by just giving da'wah to black people, which, alhamdulillah, right? That's great. But we cannot suffice ourselves and think that we have achieved some great achievement as Muslims by just giving da'wah to black people and giving the, you know, certain body appendage to white people. This is ridiculous. This is not going to work.
I think this is I think this is a great note to end it off.
I think the machine will just shut down now.
Yeah, we already have a little bit of technical difficulties.
Besides, I think if Munir mentions my name around his wife again, man, no.
So, with that, thank you, Imam Marc, for being on the podcast with us. Jazakallah khairan for your time and
nothing to apologize for.
Nothing to
Sorry,
apologize
I told you I can't say my name in 2 hours, let alone, you know.
Alhamdulillah, it was an amazing conversation. So with that, this is Amr Mabrook with the Prophetic Mentality Podcast signing off. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.